Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video tutorial, we are going to be 3D modeling this object in SOLIDWORKS. So the first thing I'm going to take note of is where my origin is located. And I can see my origin is located right here on this corner on the end. And it looks like this thing is pretty much symmetrical from left to right. So that does kind of tell me that when I'm doing this middle base, I can kind of do a mid-plane extrusion, and some things I can mirror back and forth from side to side. The second thing I'm going to take note of is my units. And my units here are mmgs, or millimeters. That's why I have a lot of solid numbers, no decimal places. So I know this picture is a little bit blurry. It's not the greatest picture or the clearest picture. So bear with me and I'll try to kind of point out where the different measurements are. So I'm going to be sketching on the front plane. I'm going to start with my origin in the top right. And I'm going to be making this bottom section here first that we can do a mid-plane extrusion of. I'm going to pull that to my other screen. And in SOLIDWORKS, I'm going to make a new part. I'll set my units to mmgs. And I'm going to be sketching on that front plane. I'm going to start out by just getting the line tool, selecting my origin, and I'm just going to work over to my left. This goes down a little bit, goes on a slight angle. Then there's a curve, so you could get the curve tool, or if you do this little trick, you just move back over that point and wiggle your mouse a couple times. Turns into a curve. So click, kind of back up and straight up. Now, if you don't want to do that, you could stop right there. You could just get the 3-point arc. Just do that, then get your line tool and continue. Now this is tangent at both of these spots, so please make sure that this is set to tangent. Okay, and this piece right here is kind of the same thickness all the way across. So you can also see that here. I know this isn't the clearest, but the height of this line is 12. And if I follow just my mouse straight across, you can see there's another piece that looks similar to this, and that's also 12 back here. That measurement's just turned on its side. So that means this line and this line are going to be equal to one another. Okay. And then I can just dimension one of them. Dimension this right to 12. It says the distance from the top down to this center point is actually 42. I'm sure you can see that. That's pretty obvious. It's right there in the middle. It's also 42 from this center point into the origin. Kind of moves that left or right. It says the radius of this curve is 28. So that's pretty much placed. Now it just needs the length of this top line. I'm going to pull this picture back over here to explain this again. So if I'm following from this corner where my origin is, it says it's 115 to right here, and that line is actually the center point of this. Okay, and then from there to the end is what we need to kind of figure out. Well, this 66 is the base of this piece. So this random 50 that's hanging out over here is actually from the end to this center. So we need 50 plus 115. So that's going to be 165 is the total length of this. And you can even just type in 50 plus 115 to make sure I'm correct, and I am. It's 165. Now I'm going to get my circle as well. Put a circle right here on this center point, and I'll make sure that that is diameter of 34. 34. I can go to the Features tab and hit Extrude. And again, we're drawing right in the middle, so change this from blind to mid-plane. And it says the total distance there is 66. Okay. Now that bottom is cut out. We just made ours solid, so that means we are going to have to be sketching and cutting this part out. So if I rotate around here and I just sketch on this flat piece and hit Control 8, it'll get me to a nice flat view. I can then just use my rectangle tool, click right here on this line and go down to the bottom. and then we can just dimension this. So it says from the front of it to this line is 12. You can see on the side picture. And then this is also 12. So it's just kind of centering up that rectangle that we're going to cut out. Make sure that it is connected to this line because we already said that's 12 earlier, and it's connected to the bottom. Features tab, extrude cut, and we'll set this to through all. And just so you can see what we're doing, since we drew on this flat piece here, we're actually cutting all the way through this entire thing. So now our base is done. So the next part we're going to do is the little slot piece up here. So let's sketch on top there. Sketch tool, click on top, hit Control 8. And I'm going to do this in kind of two phases. The first one is going to just make the ring that goes up. The second one is going to cut the piece through. So I'll do the straight slot. Kind of click in here somewhere and draw the center of it. You could do this again, okay, to make the outside ring. And I use the same center point so it's locked in there. So now to look at this slot, we see that it says it's 15 in between the inside one. So that's actually the radius now is going to be from the center to the outside is going to be half of 15. Okay, so that's going to be 7.5. But if we just set the 15, we don't even have to put the radius of the inside. This radius that you see, which is 16, is actually referring to this outside curve. It does look like the line's coming from the center point. Because it is, it's saying from this center point out to this curve is a radius of 16. From the center point to center point is 36. It's 42 from the origin into the center of your construction line, and it's 8 tall. Okay, so I'm looking at this grouping of numbers right here. So let's go through that again. The inside here from side to side is going to be 15. Outside radius is a radius of 16. The construction line length is 36. And it says from the center, which you see there's a little asterisk there, or a little point, from there to the origin is 42. Now, if yours is not fully black yet, that's because yours is not coincident with the origin. So mine kind of just locked into that. I don't know how I lucked out with that, but if you can kind of see, if I select this center construction line, see how it says coincident? It is coincident with the origin. So if yours is not coincident with the origin, you can click on this little center point, hold in shift, click your origin, and then either just make them horizontal, okay, so they're straight across, or if you did it by clicking on the line, yours is probably going to be coincident with the origin. So it's the same thing, but it should be fully defined. Now if I go to the Features tab and hit Extrude, I am going to just have this donut selected. So if yours is selected wrong here, if you hit this drop down and go to Selected Contours, you should be able to kind of pick what you want. So if you just click in that region, it should be fine. And that's going to be 8, going up 8. Hit the green check. Now that's all good, but we still have this middle piece that's solid, so we need to cut that out again. So if I hit my Extrude Cut, it's going to ask me for an existing sketch. I'll hit the drop down, go to my last extrusion here, and there's my sketch. Okay, now the only problem with doing that is it tries to auto select. Now we don't want it to auto select, so again, I'll hit this contours button. See how it says sketch 3? I'm just going to select that and hit delete on my keyboard. Now with this box selected, now I can just click in that area. So it's just going to take that area out. And I'll set this to through all. Green check. So now it cut that piece out. So that's how I used both sketches. Okay, so now is the tricky part back here. So this part back here actually has kind of two things going on. We have this floating tube on the top of it, and it says it's 34 times 6 deep. Okay, so 34 in diameter and 6 deep on both sides. So what that's asking, or what that's saying, is it's actually a counterbore hole. That's why you have a whole bunch of different diameters. So you have a counterbore hole on this side and a counterbore hole on this side. Now that whole entire cylinder is actually suspended in the air. It's suspended up 45 from the base to its center point, and it's got this kind of like triangular base to it, two triangular feet. So we are going to actually have to make an offset plane here. There are other ways of doing this without making a plane, but it's a little bit more than I need to explain. And this whole entire unit is working with planes. So we're going to kind of do this together. We're going to do an offset plane here first. But as far as this piece goes, since this is centered, we can sketch right on the front plane and kind of draw this cylinder out and extrude it 55 both ways, then do the counterbore on both sides. After that, we can do this. Okay, we can do these feet. Just in case I lost you there, just follow with me. I'm going to hit the sketch tool, and I'm going to actually click the front plane. So the front plane is going right through the middle of this. I'll hit Control 8. And up here, I'm going to draw a circle. And that's just going to be my outside circle. So I'm looking for the largest diameter there, which is 48. It says from the line up to its center point is 45. And from the back edge to the center point is 55, or 50, which we determined at the very beginning of this when we were kind of figuring out that length. Okay, that's 50. So now I'll go to my Features tab and hit Extrude. And since this is in the middle, we're going to change this from blind to midplane. And we're going to set it to the total distance of 55. Now that we have that tube there, or that cylinder where we need it, we can do the whole wizard. And we want the counterbore hole. Scroll down, we want to set this standard to ANSI metric because we're in metric. The type doesn't matter, the size doesn't matter, the fit doesn't matter. We want the box checked for custom sizing. And as far as the hole that goes through, that's going to be 20. So you can kind of see that measurement there on the picture. The inside is 34, and the depth down is 6. That's why it says 6 deep. Okay, so you want it set to through all. And we'll actually hit position, 3D sketch, kind of come right on here. Just click on this surface, rotate around, we'll click on this surface as well. Okay, and we'll hit the green check. Now we don't necessarily have those lined up. You can see this is just all screwed up. So we need to edit this sketch. I'm going to hit Control 8 so it's on a flat view. I'll select both of these points, and I'm going to confine them along the Z. So you can see SolidWorks even kind of figured that out. So right now the Y is going up, X is going this way. The Z, which is facing us, so forward and backwards, we're going to align them along the Z. So it'll kind of put them right over top of one another. It's almost like one of them disappeared. That's because in this straight on view, they're currently on top of one another or in line with one another. So now I'm going to click off, and I'll select this one. And really, when you're clicking on that one, you're only clicking on this front one. You're not clicking on the back one. So I just have this front one selected. Hold in Shift, and I'm going to click the outside of this cylinder, and I'm going to make them concentric. And when I move one, you see the other one move too. So now it took those and it lined it up so it's on the center point of this actual cylinder. Now we can hit the return from sketch, and now we have our counterbore on both sides, and it's perfectly lined up. Okay, from there, now we are going to have to make an offset plane. So we want to go up to Reference Geometry, so that's going to be on the Features tab, Reference Geometry and Plane. Our first reference is just going to be this outside ring. Okay, and we want to offset this distance a total of 9. And I know that because when I look at this picture, I can see that there's 9 in between this outside and the front face here. So 9 is what we're actually setting this to. So when I type in 9 for the distance, if yours is grayed out, you have to click on that little box and then type in 9. You do want to make sure that it's going into the part. Mine right now is going outside of the part. So you might actually have to click the box for flip offset so it moves it in. And you can hit the green check. Okay, so now you are sketching on the inside of that. So with the plane selected, we're going to go to the Sketch tab and select Sketch. I'll hit Control 8. And then I'm just going to use the line tool. I'm going to move my mouse over this circle, I'm not going to click on those yellow dots. I'm just going to click on the outside of the circle, come down here to the bottom, go straight across. Make sure you don't click on that midpoint. So just click on the line and back up. Again, don't click on the actual orange or yellow dot. You just want to click on the circle. Okay, so everything is now set except we don't have this bottom ring. So if you get the convert entities, we can use that tool just to click that bottom, hit the green check, and we want to trim off the top. So the convert entities just traced that over for us. As you can see, traced that over. So I'm going to get the trim entities and I'll just trim that top piece off. Okay. We'll set both of these angled lines. Select both of them. We're going to set them to equal, not parallel, equal. So they're the same. Control 8 to get back. Okay. It says this distance along the bottom is 66. So just dimension that. And that's obviously going to screw these up. So all we need to do now is select this line, hold in Shift, select this curve, and we'll set that to tangent. So it'll move it down to where it needs to be. If we do that same thing to the other side, select those two and set it to tangent, it will fully define that. So these two are equal. They're not locked in. If you're getting some warnings that you can't do that, it's probably because you clicked on that yellow dot, and those yellow dots would be somewhere right around here. Notice this goes up past the yellow dot because the diameter of this cylinder is actually only 48 and the base of it's 66, meaning you're not coming at a sharp enough angle to make it tangent right at those midpoints. This is actually up past the midpoints a little bit. Now we'll go to the Features tab and hit Extrude. And we want to make sure we're going back this way. Okay, so hit the reverse button. And that's a total distance of 9. Again, you can see that on the picture. So now that's 1 foot. You could do that same thing to the other side, but since we are symmetrical and we're working kind of off of the middle plane, you can actually hit the mirror button, and it says mirror faces or plane. You hit that drop down and select the front. That goes right through the middle, and the feature we want is extrusion 4. And you can also click on it here. Hit the green check, and it should mirror that right over. If you don't want to see that plane, you can right click and hit the eyeball. But there is our shape. So now we are finished with that. So let's go and change the material. And this is plain carbon steel, which is one of these defaults. Go to the evaluate and mass properties, and you should get a total of 2703.61. So 2703.61 grams. Your X should be a negative 88.27, Y should be a negative 1.04, and your Z should be 0 because it is symmetrical. So if you got that, you can save and move on to the next one. If you didn't, please problem solve and figure out where you went wrong.